Hello guys and welcome to the video. There's been a lot of turbulence this week in the flight that is AMD's launch of the RX Vega 64 and 56 graphics cards. There's been some confusion from reviewers, confusion among retailers, and confusion among large parts of the online community. As is typical with highly anticipated product launches such as RX Vega, there have been some pricing and availability issues, but in this case there are perhaps more than anyone was expecting. And it's not entirely clear if the issues can be contributed to genuine market conditions or some sort of incompetence on the part of AMD. I'll admit, AMD isn't making it easy for us to make any sense of this. There's standalone cards, bundles, retailers in different countries seem to be having different base prices, stock seems to be especially low, and for a few days AMD didn't say anything about any of this aside from the single lone tweet saying the demand had been overwhelming and the company was working to replenish stock. Even the top boss of the Radeon Technology Group, Raja Koduri, seems to have gone off the radar completely since August 10th. AMD did eventually release a statement on the 18th, 4 days after the launch, which addressed some but not all of the concerns. More on that in a few minutes. Now first I'd like to have a small recap. Last year in 2016, AMD released their Polaris lineup of GPUs, which aside from a PCI power draw issue that was quickly resolved via a driver, the cards were generally well received, at their launch price of $239 on the top end. Similar to previous generations, AMD launched a full series of cards, including the RX 460, 470, and 480, ranging from 2GB to 8GB of VRAM depending on the card that you purchased. Unlike the last couple of generations, however, such as the 200 and 300 series, Polaris did have some major architectural changes and was on a new process, which created for some overall solid efficiency gains, aiming to bring VR to the sub-$300 masses. It is worth noting, however, that Polaris was still built on GCN, the 4th generation, which is the same basic core architecture as multiple of its predecessors. The Polaris lineup was then refreshed in 2017 with the RX 500 series, with AMD referring to it as the most compelling graphics card upgrade yet. Still based on Polaris, the 500 series featured a new card on the low end, the RX 550, called the Doorway to PC Gaming, aimed at entry-level esports titles. A full chip for the 560 this time, instead of the cut-down version for the 460, likely due to the manufacturing process becoming more mature, and higher clocks down the entire stack at the cost of some efficiency. The only problem with Polaris was that it didn't compete in the high-end GPU space. Polaris offered solid competition in the mid-range and mid-low spaces, even offering a small upgrade over the previous generation's RX 480 because of increased clocks. However, GTX 1070, 1080, and 1080 Ti continued on without a competitor. Enter Vega. Vega was planned to be AMD's new high-performance GPU competing in the premium GPU space. Originally, a roadmap from AMD's Capsaicin event gave the impression that Vega might be released in the beginning of 2017, depending on how the roadmap was interpreted. AMD later came out with an official launch date of first half 2017, a launch date which they met with the launch of their prosumer graphics card. The Radeon Vega Frontier Edition launched at Computex 2017. Now this did rub some gamers the wrong way, as they felt they'd been tricked with the launch of Frontier. Frontier was a workstation card not built for gaming and was priced as such with an MSRP of $999 USD. While I was disappointed that the gaming card wasn't released at the same time, I won't say I was upset or angry, as the promise of Vega had been fulfilled, and if the workstation card was out, then its gaming counterpart couldn't be too far behind, and it wasn't. AMD CEO Dr. Lisa Su announced at the same Computex event that RX Vega, the gaming line, would be launching at SIGGRAPH 2017, roughly 2 months away. Once SIGGRAPH arrived on July 31st, we learned that Vega 64 would indeed be launching and be available for purchase on the 14th of August 2017, 2 weeks after the event, roughly 1 week prior to this video. As you might can guess, after these perceived delays, whether legitimate delays or just misunderstandings about the launch date, the community had grown antsy. This is a PC community that had been waiting 2 years since the launch of the Fury X line, the last time that AMD had an answer to NVIDIA's top-end gaming GPU. Receive an answer the community did. As scheduled at 9 AM Eastern Time on the 14th of August, review embargoes were listed and the Vega 64 graphics cards went on sale, with the little brother Vega 56 being withheld until the end of August. I personally watched as Newegg Stock, a major retailer here in the US, sold out of standalone cards within less than a minute of product listings going live. The bundles, including Wolfenstein 2 and Prey, sold out within a couple minutes more. Even in the following days, both Newegg and Amazon in the US have remained sold out, aside from scalpers and Radeon packs, which contain monitors or CPU motherboard combinations. Here begins the first point of contention between AMD and the current community at large. Why did RX Vega sell out so quickly? Was it really that strong of a performer? I'll be discussing performance in a separate video, hopefully after I get a hold of a Vega 64 card. But we know that Vega 64 is roughly around a GTX 1080, although it consumes more power, and that the stock Vega 56 handily beats a stock clocked GTX 1070 and can match an OC'd 1070. But was that enough cause to create a GPU craze? Or, as some have suggested, did AMD simply have abysmally poor stock built up at the time of launch? Let's take a look. Now, the first reason might be the performance of the GPU itself. While we have reviews of Vega 56, it's not available for purchase, so the stock concerns currently relate to the Vega 64 model. Vega 56, however, does seem to have better relative performance of the two, and AMD certainly wants you. Here we see a marketing email from RTG quoting Forbes and some well-known tech outlets and a statement about Vega, and they're all about Vega 56. None of the quotes have anything to do with Vega 64. With the Vega 64 and GTX 1080 having similar prices in a lot of countries, it makes you wonder what is to keep someone from buying a more power-efficient 1080 at a similar price instead of the Vega 64. The only solid conclusion that I found is that if a person already owns or soon intends to own a FreeSync monitor. As someone who's used adaptive sync technologies before, I can attest to the power of the feature, and they really are great things to have. It seemed like AMD themselves were banking a little too heavily on this feature in order to make the value proposition of Vega versus the upper 10 series, as seen in their Budapest and Oregon showings. While there is merit to FreeSync being significantly cheaper than NVIDIA's comparable G-Sync, as we see here we have nearly identical monitors with the only difference being FreeSync and G-Sync, all other features, major features remaining mostly the same, and we see a $150 price difference. In the grand scheme of things, adaptive sync's value relative to the whole purchase depends on how much emphasis a consumer puts on the ecosystem of a monitor and GPU together as opposed to just the GPU alone. I don't think consumers are going to be sold on buying a monitor and GPU together at the same time to save money unless they're already in the market for a monitor to begin with. Next, are miners to blame? This is an easy thing to assume as well, as there's evidence to support that this might be true at least to some extent. If we look at mainstream cards, it's been almost impossible to purchase a 47570, a 48580, or even a GTX 1070 at a normal price within the last few months. These shortages caused by cryptocurrencies are beginning to affect the 560 4GB cards as well as the GTX 1080s, either causing their stock to shrink or for their prices to rise. Now, AMD does have historically stronger compute performance than their NVIDIA counterparts, causing them to be the better choice for mining. It was assumed that this would be no different with Vega. It was even rumored that Vega could be capable of mining speeds over twice that of the typical 580 GPU, hitting between 70 and 100 mH per second. This alone caused much ease among the gaming community and was exactly the kind of information that miners needed to prime themselves to scoop up all of the cards at launch. Now, as it turns out, the rumor was complete baloney, and Vega 64's mining speed fall between that of a Fury X and a 1080 Ti while not being terribly power efficient at the same time, an important feature for miners. Now, with gamers complaining about the lack of stock because of the miners, we would hope to see AMD or NVIDIA attempting to mitigate the issue in some way, or at least to pump out more cards so that more stock would be available. In a way, we saw AMD respond to that cry, and in a statement to Hard OCP, Radeon Senior Marketing Director Chris Hook said that part of the reason the Vega launch came later than anticipated was AMD attempting to build up greater volume of GPUs to have available at launch time. Chris specifically stated that part of the reason they did this was to compensate for coin miners and to allow gamers to get their hands on the cards. Whether or not this strategy worked is hard to say for sure, because it appears that many stores, at least in the US, still did not receive many cards, and as mentioned above, the store sold out almost instantly. Unfortunately, we can't go back in time and move the launch up sooner to see if anything would be different, but Radeon's Twitter page does try to assure the masses that the demand for the cards was simply astronomically high. A conversation between a Reddit user and a customer service representative at Newegg seems to reinforce AMD's statement and assures the user that they are working hard to replenish stock. The Newegg representative goes on to say that more stock will be arriving at Newegg between August 17th and August 23rd. In a strange turn of events, however, AMD has released a beta driver for their Vega GPUs that is supposedly increasing mining performance and directed exactly at that. This seems to contradict earlier vibes from the company, but it does likely stem from the simple reality that a company must face that while gamers want GPUs to game on and AMD would love to provide them, a miner's money is just as green. The mining driver does indeed increase the mining performance by circumventing a rising limitation with Ethereum mining. However, the cards still do not reach anywhere near the unfounded rumor from earlier that Vega could hit 70 mH per second or more. Pretty tangled web that's been weaved, right? Well, it gets more complicated with each passing day. Rumors are now starting to appear that AMD may have been misleading regarding their manufacturer's suggested retail pricing, or that they have raised the MSRP intentionally after seeing the large demand for Vega. These rumors have even garnered attention from major tech tubers such as Linus Tech Tips or Jay's 2 Cents. Personally, this seems like a cynical conclusion to jump to. All the other confusion and eagerness surrounding this Vega 64 launch is leading people to see the worst side of things every time a new piece of news comes to light. It seems most likely to me that similar to Polaris or other launches from either brand, retailers are simply raising prices of their cards in their stores to cash in on massive demand, be it from miners or otherwise. Additionally, I thought retailers might be also trying to capitalize on the lack of clarity surrounding the use and implementation of the Radeon packs. As we can see from the slide above, pulled from AMD's SIGGRAPH presentation, the Vega 56 has an MSRP of $399 US and Vega 64 an MSRP of $499 US, both cards having the standard black shrouds. These are standard edition standalone graphics cards like you're typically used to buying. This is simple enough. Additionally though, there are 3 Radeon packs. Each adds $100 US to the MSRP at each tier, offering access to the limited edition Vega 64 air-cooled card with a brushed aluminum shroud for $599 US, and the liquid-cooled Vega 64 for $699 US. The packs include 2 games, which vary by region, a $100 discount on select Ryzen and AM4 motherboard combo purchases, and a $200 coupon for a Samsung FreeSync monitor. It should be noted that in order to get those discounts, all the parts must be purchased at the same time, which can lead to a pretty hefty invoice. The cheapest Vega 64 currently available is now $599 US with the black shroud, containing 2 game bundles, but none of the other items that are contained within the Radeon pack. This further adds to confusion. OC3D wasted little time pushing out an article regarding a price increase, and they later updated their article saying that they had confirmed, though without stating who they confirmed with, that the price increase did indeed come from AMD and that it was intentional. It should be noted that OC UK, the partner of OC3D, was one of the first websites to raise their prices. OC3D later doubled down on their stance, stating that retailers have been receiving rebates for selling Vega 64 at the MSRP, and that if the rebates stopped coming from AMD, the cards would no longer be able to be sold at those prices. This seems to me, at the time and still currently, suspect and quite frankly, unlikely. On the morning of the 18th, after over 3 days of post-launch suspicions, AMD did release an official statement to the Finnish tech site IO Tech. The statement wrote that RX Vega 64 demand continues to exceed expectations. AMD is working closely with partners to address the demand. The statement goes on to reinforce the MSRPs given originally at SIGGRAPH, and that the GPU should be available both as standalone cards and Radeon packs in the future. No part of the official statement addressed the allegations of rebates being used to offset the cost for retailers so that cards could be sold at MSRP. To wrap all this up, the Vega launch seems unprepared at best, and somewhat reminiscent of the Google Pixel and Nexus launches, where legitimate large demand for the product did exist, but the main flaw actually lied in a poorly functioning supply chain. I'm personally quite fond of AMD as a company. I don't think these pricing inconsistencies were caused on purpose. It seems like a lot of hoops to jump through for AMD to intentionally change the pricing, and it also seems really unlikely that they would go through the trouble of doing something like rebates, as some of the retailers have suggested. I believe even the best PR teams, however, would have trouble making people believe that this is the way that the launch was intended to go. I think some added transparency from AMD might go a longer way in strengthening the relationship with those keeping an eye on Vega within the community. Vega is a pretty good product on its own, the 56 more so than the 64, with its main drawback being increased power consumption compared to the current competition from Nvidia. Obviously, it's not a new gaming king, as it were, with the 1080 Ti still ahead in gaming performance. The Ti is something I don't think AMD saw coming back in March, but strong supply at retailers and some sort of assurance to the community that cards will be available at MSRP would likely see Vega sell pretty well, all things considered. On the other hand, if pricing continues to remain above MSRP for an extended period of time, then the people that were likely waiting on Vega the most in hopes of an offering different than Nvidia's might end up being the most disappointed. If you've made it this far in the video, I truly appreciate you watching the whole thing, and I hope you found it either informational, entertaining, or both. I'm not sure if all my videos will remain around this time limit or not. This one did take quite a bit of time to put together, and I had no pre-embargo information to work with. If you have any feedback for the channel, things you'd like to see in a new video, things you don't want to see in a new video, please comment or send me mail with your thoughts. Being a new channel, if you did enjoy the video, it'd be very helpful for me if you would like and subscribe. I hope to have more content coming out for you very soon. Cheers.